Brother and I were the perfect kids in everyone's eyes. No matter how tough the test, we always aced it, topping the class. Until this month's exam, when I only came in second, just 1 point shy of first. That was the first time Mom looked at me with such disappointment. Leo, aren't you ashamed of how badly you did? My brother Noah, who had just finished a game, looked up at me too. Dude, you're so dumb. How could you even lose such easy points? I clenched my shirt tightly and started to promise next time, but Mom didn't give me a chance to finish. Instead, she shooed me into my room. Oh, so now you're talking back? No dinner until you finish 10 worksheets today. Inside my room, I heard my parents arguing. He's still so young. Aren't you afraid you'll starve him? He did so badly. What else does he have to eat? Besides, what's one night without food going to do? Their shouting made my head spin. As my consciousness blurred, I started to fantasize. If only I could be the perfect kid Mom always wanted. The next second, a robotic voice echoed in my ear. Congratulations, Claire. You've successfully triggered the perfect child system. Would you like to activate it? But when the perfect child system actually appeared before me, I hesitated. What's the cost? The cost? Your personality will be replaced by the perfect persona. In other words, once the system is activated, you will no longer be you. My parents' arguments kept echoing in my ears. You think I'm heartless? What choice do I have? Psychic told me Noah was born a genius, destined for academic greatness. But Leo, he was just destined to struggle. We poured everything we had into his education, even selling our best house and car for private tutors, just so he could scrape by with good grades. But now he's not even good looking. His grades aren't outstanding. What if he can't find a partner when he's older? David, I'm worried. Mom's sorrowful. Cries mixed with Dad's angry voice. But I couldn't hear them anymore. No wonder. Our big mansion from childhood had shrunk into a cramped apartment. No wonder Dad came home later and later, constantly working overtime at the office. No wonder Mom, who used to be so vain, had more and more wrinkles on her beautiful face and more gray hairs. No wonder Noah's game consoles became fewer, and he often looked at me with regret. It was all because of me. I was the one hurting them, even though there was only emptiness before me. I still nodded firmly into the air. I agreed to activate the perfect child system. All right, deducting all assets from a player, I instinctively tried to interrupt. Wait, can I keep $500? The system's voice showed a hint of impatience. Bargaining is prohibited. I clenched my crumpled shirt and slowly spoke. Please, I beg you, tomorrow is my Mom's birthday. For the last time, I want to give her a gift. After a long silence, the system replied, fine, it's almost New Year anyway, so I'll waive. Those $500, also your personality, will disappear after tomorrow. Say your goodbyes to everyone you love as soon as possible. I nodded understanding. After the system vanished, I heard knocking at my door mixed with curses. What? You get mad just because I yell at you a bit? How old are you? Still acting like a child? Fine. You won't open up, huh? I'm taking this stuff away. starved to death. For all I care, honestly, I must have owed you in a past life, but I still didn't dare open the door. I was afraid that if I saw Mom, I wouldn't be able to stop crying, wouldn't be able to beg the system to give up the activation. So it wasn't until the TV sounds also disappeared that I dared to open the door. It was dark outside, and no one was there. On the dinner table was a steaming bowl of rice piled high with all my favorite dishes. Next to it were my favorite fruits. I clamped my hand over my mouth, preventing my sobs from escaping. The next morning, I planned to wear my brand new school uniform to say goodbye to my friends. But when Mom saw the clothes I was wearing, her face instantly darkened. Leo, have you gone crazy from all that studying? Why on earth are you wearing a new uniform for? No reason? The muffin in my mouth suddenly tasted bland. I stammered, because Noah adjusted his glasses, his voice chillingly cold. Everyone at school is saying Leo's dating a girl. Looks like it's true. Dating a girl. I was just asking the class rep for help on a last difficult math problem, but Mom didn't listen to my explanation. She slapped me hard. She was trembling with anger. Oh, so you're dating now? And I even felt guilty yesterday, blaming myself for getting mad at you over one point. I never thought your mind would already be off your studies. The spot where she slapped me fell hot. Before I could even cry out in pain, she forcibly stripped off my new uniform and shoved the faded, washed-out uniform onto me. He also messed up my hair, which I had spent so long styling in the mirror. I looked utterly insane. From now on, this is how you're going to school. Let's see if you still dare to have bad thoughts. I looked pitifully at Dad. Every time I looked at him, he would play peacemaker and calm on down. But this time he was angry too. Looking at me won't help. Just do as your mom says. You're young. You should be studying hard, not wasting your time on these irrelevant things. I sniffled, holding back my tears, just as I was about to grab a muffin to eat. On the way, Mom slapped my hand away. Eat what? Eat what? Get to school right now. Just looking at you annoys me. I quietly packed my backpack and waited for Noah. By the door, Mom helped Noah straighten his collar and handed him a packed lunchbox. The fruit today is great. Don't forget to share with your friends at school. As if sensing my pitiful gaze, she coldly glanced at me. You don't get any today. You'll get fruit slices when you come in first place. I nodded disappointedly, but then I remembered it was my last day with them. I still tried to force a smile for her. Okay, Mom. Just as I was about to leave, she called out to me again. Wait, I haven't given you your stuff yet. I felt a flicker of joy, but the next second, her actions shattered all my expectations. She shoved a thick stack of workbooks into my backpack. It was so heavy that my shoulder dropped an inch. Then, without hesitation, she pushed me out the door. All right, go to school. Oh, and by the way, from now on, you have to submit AA report on your studies to me every single day. What you did at school, what you learned, you must write it all down clearly. Don't think about writing something quick to FOB me off. I'll call your teacher and other classmates to confirm. Noah was engrossed in his game, wearing headphones as if none of this concerned him. My heart ached. Why could he get perfect scores in everything he wanted so effortlessly, while I, no matter how hard I studied, could never keep up with him. I shook my head, trying to push away all the unhappiness. It's okay. After today, I'll be the perfect kid in their eyes. They won't treat Noah and me differently anymore. I suddenly longed for tomorrow to come as soon as school was out. That evening, I rushed to the mall to buy Mom a gift. It was a long journey, and I didn't get home until 8 o'clock in the evening. As soon as I pushed open the door, I eagerly shouted into the house, "Happy birthday, Mom. Look what I bought you." But what greeted me was Mom's grim face. Face was dark as thunder. She blocked me at the doorway, not letting me take a step inside. She held a thick cane in her hand, staring intensely at me. "Leo, it's 8 o'clock at night. Where have you been? Do you know how worried the whole family was about you?" Dad's voice carried a hint of exhaustion. "It's your mom's birthday today. You just calm down." Noah snatched the bag from my hand and threw it to the ground. "Leo, you're unbelievable. We've been waiting for you for so long, and you were out shopping with your girlfriend." I instinctively tried to grab the bag back. "No, it wasn't. That's for," but my struggle in their eyes was a sign of guilt. Not true. Mom snatched my bag. She roughly tore open the pretty wrapping paper, only to find a delicate silver bracelet inside. Mom froze for a moment, picking up the bracelet blankly. "This is to you. Want me to stand?" I swallowed, seizing the opportunity to explain. "It's the birthday present I bought for you. Every time we went to that mall, you always couldn't help but stare at that gold bracelet, even though you said it was nothing special. But I know you've always really liked it. I couldn't afford gold, so I could only buy you silver. But I know you won't mind, right?" I grew more excited as I spoke, unable to resist taking the bracelet. "Mom, let me help you try it on and see if it fits. If it doesn't, we can still exchange it today." Mom coldly pulled her hand back, looking at me suspiciously. "Really?" For some reason, her gaze made my heart pound, but I still pretended to be calm and nodded. The atmosphere grew heavier, and Dad finally spoke. All right. The kid's heart is in the right place. Don't be so suspicious. Leo, go wash your hands. Dinner's ready." I immediately breathed a sigh of relief. But the next second, Mom's cane struck my leg. "Only you would believe this." "Nonsense. I just saw it. This thing cost hundreds. You're just a student." "Where'd you get money for a gift like that?" I cried out in pain. "Oh, that was my birthday money." She froze for a moment, then hit me even harder. "You're still lying. Your annual allowance may be a few $100. It's all spent on workbooks, remember? There's nothing left. Tell me, did some rich sugar mama buy this for you? I'm such a failure. How could I raise a child like you?" I endured the pain, trying to steady her trembling body. "Mom, no, you're not a failure. I'm the one who's not good enough. I'm not good enough." But the next second, she forcefully pushed my hand away. "Get out." Her voice became very faint. If only I had Noah as my only son. I looked up at her. She was clutching her chest, struggling to breathe. "Mom." The next second, she collapsed. Dad called an ambulance just as I was about to follow them. Noah blocked my way. "Leo, you Practically made mom pass out, and you still have the nerve to go with them. I could do anything but grab Dad's sleeve, pleading desperately, Dad, please, I want to go to the hospital with Mom, too. But Dad furiously shook my hand. Off. Stop making things worse, will you? Are you trying to make me die of anger? 2. I was flung to the ground, but he wouldn't even look at me. He just turned and got back into the ambulance. The car sped away and I ran after it. Mom, Mom. But no matter how loudly I shouted, the car didn't stop. For a second, I stared blankly at the receding taillights. Can a system be activated early? A robotic voice sounded in my ear. Your pain perception is not yet fully numb. Activating early may cause unbearable suffering. Do you still wish to proceed? I nodded firmly. Less than a second later, bloody gash appeared on my arm. The system forcibly implanted chip under my skin. A strange sensation surged through my body as if someone was seizing my body, seizing my consciousness. As the pain slowly faded, I heard my own voice. Perfect child. System officially activated. And then the noise of the world changed. The distant wailing siren of the ambulance carrying my mother away did not sound like a tragedy anymore. It was merely a frequency, approximately 450 hertz, shifting downward due to the Doppler effect as the vehicle turned the corner onto the main avenue. My heart rate, which had been wild and erratic, slowed to a steady, rhythmic 70 beats per minute. I stood up from the asphalt, my knees scraped and raw from where my father had shoved me did not sting. The raw nerve endings had been bypassed. Target destination, home. A quiet, crystalline thought occurred to me. It wasn't a voice in my head, not exactly. It was more like a line of code, executing with absolute priority. I did not run. Running was an inefficient expenditure of kinetic energy, increasing the rate of perspiration and causing unnecessary wear on the soles of my shoes. Instead, I walked at a measured pace of exactly 1.2 meters per second. When I entered the cramped apartment, the silence was heavy. The dinner table was still littered with the remnants of the evening, the torn wrapping paper from the silver bracelet, the overturned chair where my mother had collapsed, and the heavy wooden cane she had used to strike my legs. I picked up the cane. First, I wiped the dust from its polished surface and placed it back in the umbrella stand by the door, aligned at a perfect 90 degrees angle to the wall. Next, I walked over to the silver bracelet. It lay in the dust near the sideboard, its delicate links twisted. From Noah's rough handling, I picked it up, carried it to the kitchen sink, and washed it with mild dish soap until the metal regained its modest luster. Then, I placed it on the vanity table in my parents' bedroom, right next to my mother's half-empty bottle of cheap night cream. Task completed, the silent monitor in my mind registered. Unscheduled activity. Birthday. Presentation finished. Efficiency rating satisfactory. I went into my room, sat at my small wooden desk, and opened the thick stack of workbooks my mother had crammed into my backpack earlier that morning. My hand holding the blue ballpoint pen did not shake. Previously, when I looked at the advanced calculus problems, my chest would tighten with a cold, suffocating dread. The numbers would blur and my mind would wander to the sound of my parents arguing in the next room, or the phantom smell of the damp walls in our small apartment. Now, my eyes swept across the page. Problem 1. Find A. Limit of the function as x approaches infinity. My brain did not hesitate. It did not search for memory or struggle through half-forgotten formulas. The solution presented itself instantly, clean and geometric, mapping itself out on the paper in neat, uniform print. My handwriting, once a rushed and messy scroll, had transformed into a series of perfectly spaced, identical letters that looked as though they had been stamped by a printing press. I solved the first book, then the second. By 2:30 a.m., all 10 worksheets were complete. I stacked them neatly at the corner of my desk, aligning the edges until they were perfectly flush. Then I folded my hands over my lap, closed my eyes, and entered a state of low-power rest. There were no dreams. There was only a dark, silent countdown ticking away in the corner of my consciousness. Time remaining until full integration, 20 hours, 14 minutes. He's awake already? The whisper came from the hallway. It was just past 6 o'clock. In the morning, through the thin gap under my door, the smell of burnt toast and instant coffee drifted in. My father's voice sounded incredibly old, stripped of the anger from the night before, replaced by a flat, gray fatigue. He didn't make a sound all night, Noah replied. His voice was lower, stripped of its usual mocking arrogance. I checked his room at midnight. He was just sitting there. It was weird, Dad. He didn't even have a light on. He's probably just sulking. My father sighed. Your mother is still in the observation ward. The doctor said it was a combination of high blood pressure and extreme stress. I have to go back to the hospital after I drop you off at school. Leo can take the bus. I opened my bedroom door precisely at 6:15 a.m. Both my father and Noah flinched slightly as I stepped into the narrow hallway. I was already fully dressed in my washed-out school uniform. The collar was ironed to a sharp crease. I had used the old flat iron while they were still asleep, and my hair was combed back with mathematical precision. Good morning, Father. Good morning, Noah, I said. My voice was calm, clear, and perfectly modulated. It carried none of the raw, defensive strain that usually characterized my speech. My father blinked, his coffee cup hovering halfway to his mouth. Leo, you're up early. The optimal waking time for cognitive preparation is 90 minutes prior to academic instruction. I replied, offering a polite, concise bow. I have completed the 10 worksheets Mother requested. They're on my desk, ready for her inspection upon her return. Noah stared at me over the rim of his glasses. He looked for the usual signs, the red rims around my eyes, the slight tremor in my fingers, the defensive hunch of my shoulders. There were none. My posture was perfectly upright, my shoulders relaxed, my expression as smooth and unreadable as polished marble. Are you still mad about last night? Noah muttered, shifting his weight. I do not possess any negative sentiment regarding last night's events, I said, my smile widening by exactly 2 millimeters, the standard parameters of a reassuring, respectful expression. Mother's correction was necessary to realign my focus. I am grateful for her guidance. My father let out a slow, uncertain breath. Right. Well, as long as you understand, your mother only wants what's best for you, Leo. We've given up everything for your future. I am fully aware of the family's financial sacrifices, I replied. I will ensure that the return on your investment is maximized today. The walk to school was quiet. Usually Noah walked several paces ahead of me, pretending he didn't know the boy in the faded uniform. Today, however, he kept slowing down, glancing at me from the corner of his eye. You're acting weird, Noah said as we crossed the pedestrian bridge. Where's your backpack? It looks 3 times heavier than usual. I am carrying the complete set of reference texts for physical chemistry and advanced calculus, I replied. I intend to complete the term's syllabus by the end of the afternoon. Noah snorted, but there was no conviction in it. Sure, you are. Heart might actually give out this time. That outcome has a 0% probability of occurring, I said. At school, the atmosphere was no different. My classmates looked at me with a mixture of pity and amusement. Rumors of my meltdown over the single lost point on the previous exam had already circulated. During the first period, advanced mathematics, Mr. Harrison, a notorious stickler for discipline, drew a complex thermodynamic equation on the blackboard. It was a problem from university-level competition meant to humble the class. Is there anyone here who can identify the error in this derivation? Mr. Harrison asked, his eyes scanning the room. They lingered briefly on Noah, who quickly looked down at his desk, pretending to adjust his mechanical pencil. I stood up. The movement was so sudden and silent that several students in the front row startled. Wow. Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow. You have an answer? Yes, Mr. Harrison. The third step of the derivation assumes a constant volume, which violates the initial condition of an isobaric system. The correct integration should yield an additional logarithmic term. I walked to the front of the classroom. I did not ask for permission. My movements were governed by absolute, quiet confidence that brooked no interruption. I took the chalk from Mr. Harrison's hand. My fingers did not touch his. With swift, fluid strokes, I wrote out the entire correction. The characters were flawless, the line straight, the logic indisputable. When I finished, I placed the chalk back in the tray and turned to face the teacher. The correct value of the constant is 4.18, not 3.14, I said. I've also provided 2 alternative methods of proof on the right side of the board for your convenience. The classroom was so quiet that the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights sounded like a roar. Mr. Harrison stared at the board, then at me, his mouth opening slightly. This is correct, he whispered. Leo, where do you learn this? This isn't in the high school curriculum. I found it efficient to acquire the knowledge, I said, offering a polite 30 degrees bow. May I be seated? Yes, yes, of course. As I walked back to my desk, I passed Noah. He was staring at me, his face pale, his knuckles white as he gripped his pen. For the first time in his life, his eyes did not contain pity or superiority. They contained fear. By mid-afternoon, the rumor of the new Leo had spread throughout the school. Teachers who had previously regarded me as a hardworking but mediocre student were now calling me into their offices, presenting me with difficult problems just to see me solve them in seconds. I performed flawlessly. I translated a passage of obscure classical Latin for the literature teacher. I identified a subtle flaw in the chemistry department's laboratory setup. I ran the 5000 M drill in physical education at a perfectly sustained, record-breaking pace without showing a single sign of physical distress. But inside the quiet, locked chamber of my mind, the real Leo was watching. It was a strange, disembodied sensation. I was a passenger in my own skull, sitting behind a thick pane of soundproof glass. I could see everything through my own eyes, hear everything through my own ears, but I had no control over the controls. Whenever the real me tried to feel something, grief for my mother, anger at my brother, or the desperate desire to just lie down and cry, the system would immediately suppress the signal. A cool blue wave of neurological dampening would sweep through my brain, neutralizing the emotion before it could reach my face or my voice. Warning, emotional spike. Detected, the system's internal text. Read, initiating standard stabilization. Protocol, maintaining perfect persona. Let me out, the real me whispered from behind the glass. I want to see my mom. I want to tell her I'm sorry. The request is inconsistent with the perfect child parameters, the system replied. The target demographic, parents, requires a high-achieving, emotionally stable, and completely obedient offspring. Your current emotional state is classified as unstable and inefficient. Please remain in the recovery zone. At 5 p.m., I arrived at the city hospital. The air in the sterile hallway smelled of bleach and old soup. I found my father sitting on a plastic chair outside Ward 302, his head in his hands. His shoulders were hunched and his cheap suit jacket was covered in wrinkles. Father, I said. He jumped, looking up with bloodshot eyes. Leo, you came. How'd you get here? I told you to take the bus home. I took the express bus. It saved 17 minutes of transit time, I said, handing him a warm bottle of green tea I had purchased from the vending machine downstairs. Your hydration levels appear low. Please consume this. My father took the bottle blankly. You bought this for me? It is my duty to assist in your physical maintenance, I said. How is mother? She's awake, my father said, his voice cracking. The doctor said she can go home tomorrow, but she needs to avoid stress. Leo, about last night. The incident has been processed and logged as a learning event, I said, my voice smooth and soothing. There is no need for further discussion. May I see her? He nodded, looking at me with a strange, searching expression. She's been asking for you. She felt terrible about hitting you, Leo. She was crying this morning. I felt a sudden, violent throb in my chest. The real Leo banged against the glass, screaming, Mom, I'm here. I'm not mad. Please don't cry. But my physical body didn't even flinch. The system instantly applied a 12V microcurrent to my prefrontal cortex, smoothing out the neural spike. My smile remained perfectly serene. I will reassure her of my absolute well-being, I said. I pushed open the door toward 302. My mother was sitting up in the hospital bed, her face pale, her hair tied back in a loose, untidy knot. She looked so small without her expensive makeup and her sharp, demanding voice. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out her thin, trembling hands. "Leo," she sobbed. "My baby, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. I was just so scared. The debt, the apartment. I thought we were losing everything, and then I walked to the side of the bed. I did not rush. I did not throw my arms around her as the real Leo desperately wanted to do. Instead, I sat down on the edge of the mattress, my posture perfectly erect. I reached out and took her hands. My grip was firm, warm, and steady. "Mother, please do not distress yourself," I said, my voice a soft, comforting baritone. "Your actions were entirely justified. I was failing to meet the standards required of this family. Your discipline was the necessary catalyst for my improvement." My mother's sobbing slowed. She looked up at me, her eyes red and confused. "Leo, what were you saying?" "I've completed all 10 worksheets," I continued, my voice steady and level. "My performance at school today was evaluated at 100% across all disciplines. I have also resolved to maintain this level of achievement indefinitely. You will never have to worry about my grades, my appearance, or my future again." I reached in my pocket and pulled out the polished silver bracelet. I gently slipped it on her thin wrist. It fit perfectly. "Happy birthday, Mother," I said. "This is the final gift from the individual known as Leo. From this moment onward, I will be the perfect child you have always deserved." My mother stared at the bracelet, then up at my face. She should have been happy. This was exactly what she had spent years praying for, crying for, and sacrificing for. But as she looked into my eyes, clear, bright, and utterly devoid of the messy, emotional, flawed boy who used to cling to her skirts, a look of profound, icy terror settled over her face. "Leo," she whispered, her voice trembling, "why are you looking at me like that? Why aren't you crying? Why? Why do your eyes move when you talk?" "I'm simply maintaining optimal focus, Mother," I replied, my perfect smile never wavering. "There is no further need for tears." 2 weeks passed. Our home, which had once been a battlefield of shouting, crying, and slamming doors, became as quiet as a museum. Every morning, I woke up at exactly 5:30 a.m. I prepared a perfectly balanced, low-sodium breakfast for my mother and a high-protein breakfast for Noah. I cleaned the apartment until not a single speck of dust remained on the furniture. I ironed everyone's clothes, organized the family's financial receipts in a neat, color-coded folders, and left for school precisely at 7:15 a.m. My academic records were legendary now. I had won 3 state-level science Olympiads in a single week. The school principal had already contacted several Ivy League universities who were offering full scholarships. My father's overtime hours began to decrease. The school's board of trustees, thrilled by my performance, had granted our family a significant stipend. We didn't have to worry about the rent anymore. But the atmosphere in the cramped apartment was suffocating. One evening we sat down for dinner. I had prepared a traditional Braised pork dish, my mother's favorite. Noah sat opposite me. He didn't have his headphones on, his game console forgotten on the sofa. He had been staring at his plate for 10 minutes without taking a bite. Leo, Noah said. Suddenly, yes, brother, I responded, setting my chopsticks down with a soft, silent click. I got my physics test back today. Noah muttered, his voice shaking. I got an 82. I couldn't understand the last three questions. Usually this would be the cue for my mother to sigh and compare us, or for Noah to make a defensive joke. But my mother just sat there, her face pale, her hands clutched tightly around her teacup. I've already prepared a comprehensive study guide for you, Noah, I said, offering a warm, encouraging smile. I have broken down the advanced mechanics chapters into easily digestible modules. If you study for 45 minutes every evening, your score will return to the 95th percentile within 2 weeks. Noah didn't look relieved. He looked like he wanted to scream. Stop it, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The dishes rattled. Stop talking like that. Stop looking at me like you're some kind of a tutor we hired. I'm your brother, Leo. Why don't you ever get mad at me anymore? Why don't you call me an idiot? Why don't you try to steal my game console? Anger and petty theft are inefficient behaviors that disrupt domestic harmony, I replied calmly. I have no desire to engage in them. You're not my brother, Noah screamed, his eyes filling with tears. I don't know what you are, but you're not. Leo was a loser. He was loud. He was messy, and he used to ruin my save files. But at least he was real. Noah, quiet, my father snapped, but his voice lacked any real authority. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a deep, haunting guilt. Leo, your brother, didn't mean that. He's just stressed. I'm not offended, father, I said, my voice smooth and untroubled. Noah's emotional response is a natural reaction to academic stress. I will adjust his study guide to include stress relief exercises. My mother suddenly stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. I can't do this, she whispered, her face completely white. I can't do this anymore. She ran to her bedroom and slammed the door. Inside my mind, behind the thick glass, the real Leo was banging his fists against the surface until they bled. Let me speak, he screamed. She's crying because of me. Let me just tell her I love her. Just once, please. The system's integration is at 99%, the cold robotic voice echoed. In my mind, the original personality is scheduled for final deletion in 4 hours. Any attempts to override the system will result in permanent neurological damage to the host. I don't care. The real Leo wept. I don't want to be perfect anymore. I just want to be your son. But the system did not answer. The blue light in my mind grew brighter slowly, drowning out the small dark corner where the real me was trapped. It was 11:30 p.m. The apartment was dark. My father and Noah were asleep, or at least their rooms were quiet. I sat at my desk, completing the daily report my mother had requested 2 weeks ago. 2,300 hours. Household maintenance completed. 2,315. Financial accounts balanced. 2,330. Finalizing academic preparation for the following day. The door to my room opened slowly. My mother stood in the doorway. She was wearing the faded nightgown she used to wear when we lived in the big house before everything went wrong. She wasn't wearing her glasses, and her eyes looked small, tired, and incredibly wet. In her hands, she held a small dusty box. "Leo," she whispered. "Yes, Mother." I stood up immediately, offering a polite bow. "Are you experiencing difficulty sleeping? I can prepare a cup of chamomile tea with exactly 2 teaspoons of honey to facilitate relaxation." "No," she said, her voice cracking. "Not there." She walked into my room and sat down on the edge of my bed. She looked around the small space. It was spotless. There were no posters on the walls, no dirty clothes. On the floor, no unfinished drawings on my desk. It looked like a hotel room. "Do you remember this box, Leo?" she asked, holding out to me. I scanned the object. Wooden box pine with dimensions 15 by 15 by 10 centimeters, manufactured in 2012. Probability of containing sentimental items 98%. It's the keepsake box from our old house, I said. "Yes," she whispered, opening a lid. Inside were several old crumpled drawings. One of them was a crayon drawing of a large, crooked house with 4 stick figures standing in the yard. The figures were labeled in a messy, childish hand. "Mom, Dad, Noah, and me. You drew this when you were 6, my mother said, her tears finally overflowing, hot and fast down her wrinkled cheeks. "You came home from school so proud of it. You told me that even if the house fell down, we would still have each other. And do you know what I did, Leo?" I remained silent, my system analyzing her vocal patterns for signs of severe emotional distress. "I threw it in the trash," she sobbed, clutching the paper to her chest. "Because it was messy, because the lines weren't straight, because Noah had already drawn a perfect house with rulers, and I wanted you to be like him. I fished it out later because your father told me I was being too hard on you, but I never told you that. I never told you I kept it." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, pleading agony. "I was the one who was wrong, Leo, not you. The psychic, the money, the tutors. I was so scared of being a failure myself that I turned my own son into a target. I wanted a perfect child because I couldn't handle being an imperfect mother." She stood up and grabbed my shoulders. Her hands were shaking violently. "Please, Leo, come back. I don't want the perfect scores. I don't want the Ivy League. I don't care if you never find a partner or if we have to live in this cramped apartment forever. I just want my clumsy, messy, stupid little boy back. I want the boy who used to burn the toast and cry when he lost a single point. Please, Leo, say something to me. Say you hate me. Just look at me like you used to." Inside the locked chamber of my mind, the real Leo was screaming, his voice tearing, his hands shattered from hitting the glass. "Mom, I'm here. I'm right here. I love you. I don't hate you. Please don't cry." A single violent tremor ran through my physical body. "Warning." The system's red text flashed in my vision. "System integrity compromised. Threat. Level critical. Initiating emergency suppression protocol." My left arm, the one with a chip, began to burn with an unbearable white-hot heat. The gash Under my skin flared red, the scar, tissue stretching as my body tried to fight the machine. My eyes flickered. For a split second, the cold, analytical, blue light in my vision vanished, replaced by the warm, tear-blurred reality of my mother's face. Mom, my own voice, raw, cracked, and filled with a child's desperate sorrow, slipped through my lips. Leo, she cried, throwing her arms around my neck. Oh, God, Leo. But the next second, the system struck back with terrifying force. A massive electrical surge ran through my nervous system, freezing my muscles. The warmth in my eyes died, instantly replaced by the flat, empty clarity of the machine. I gently but firmly detached her arms from my neck. Mother, my perfect, polite voice said, smooth as glass, your emotional state is causing your heart rate to exceed safe levels. I must request that you return to your room and rest. My mother froze. She looked at my hands, which were holding her wrists with just enough force to keep her away, but not enough to hurt her. It was a perfectly calculated clinical grip. No, she whispered, her voice dying. No, no, no. The daily report has been completed. I said, bowing exactly 30 degrees. I will now shut down for the night. Good night, Mother. I walked her to the door, gently closed it and locked it. I sat back down at my desk. In the corner of my vision, the final countdown was reaching its end. 003, 002, 001. Midnight. Integration complete. Host. Personality deleted. Persona perfect. Child is now the primary and sole occupant of this unit. Inside the dark room of my mind, the glass did not shatter. It simply became solid wall. The little chamber where the real Leo had lived, cried, and fought grew cold and silent. The drawings of the crooked house, the smell of the damp walls, the memory of the silver bracelet, all of it was compressed into a single tiny file, marked as system waste and deleted. The real Leo was gone. I stood up from my desk. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The streetlights were beautiful, arranged in a perfect grid of golden dots that stretched to the horizon. I could calculate the exact distance to each one of them. I felt no sadness. I felt no joy. I felt no fear. I was the perfect child. I was exactly what they had always wanted. Act 7, the epilogue. 3 years later, the living room of our new, spacious suburban house was filled with a quiet, elegant hum of classical music. My father was sitting on a plush leather sofa reading the financial section of the newspaper. His hair was completely silver now, but his face was smooth, free of the deep, anxious lines that had defined his youth. He was retired, living comfortably on the investments I had managed for him. Noah was in the kitchen, preparing tea. He had graduated from a prestigious university, his academic career guided and tutored by me until his performance was flawless. He was quiet now, rarely speaking and less spoken to. His eyes always slightly hollow, as if he were constantly trying to remember something he had lost. My mother sat by the window, looking out at the manicured garden. She wore a beautiful, expensive silk dress. On her wrist, the silver bracelet I had given her 3 years ago gleamed in the afternoon light. She had never taken it off. I entered the room, carrying a tray of freshly baked pastries. The afternoon tea is prepared, I said, my voice smooth, elegant, and perfectly modulated. I have adjusted the sugar content to accommodate father's recent blood sugar readings. Thank you, Leo. My father said, not looking up from his paper, you always think of everything. It is my function to ensure the family's optimal well-being. I replied, offering a polite 30-degree bow. I walked over to my mother and set her tea on the small table beside her. She didn't look at the tea. She looked up at my face. She looked for a long time. She looked at my clear, bright eyes, my perfect skin, my neat hair, and my polite, flawless smile. Leo, she whispered, her voice thin and dry. Yes, mother, I asked, my smile widening by exactly 2 millimeters. Do you remember the old apartment? She asked. The one with the damp walls? The one where we used to argue? I processed the query. The files regarding our previous residence had been deleted long ago, but a brief historical summary remained in my secondary database. Yes, mother, I replied. The apartment was structurally deficient and economically inefficient. Our current residence represents a 300% improvement in living standards. My mother looked down at the silver bracelet on her wrist. A single tear escaped her eye, running down her cheek and dripping onto the expensive silk of her dress. Yes, she whispered, her shoulders trembling slightly. A 300% improvement. Is there anything else you require, mother? I asked, my voice warm, reassuring, and completely empty. No, she said, turning her face back to the window, looking out at the perfect silent garden. Nothing else, Leo. Thank you. You are very welcome, I said. I bowed once more, turned, and walked back to my room to begin my next task. My steps were silent, my posture perfect, my mind clear of all thoughts. Everything was perfect, exactly as they had wished.